So physical well-being is a major risk factor in the workplace, with musculo-skeletal issues, sedentary behaviour and poor sleeping habits all hitting employees' ability to perform at their best. But throughout the pandemic, many employers' thinking has been focused on supporting employees' mental health, possibly to the detriment of physical factors. As we now move into the new era of hybrid working for the longer term, what can we do to engage employees more effectively with their physical well-being across the whole workforce? I'm joined today by Matthew Gregson, Executive Director, UK Corporate Howden Employee Benefits and Wellbeing, to discuss some of the findings from our recent research, the Workplace Physical Wellbeing Dilemma, and how employers can address some of the problems that we saw. If you'd like to jump ahead to specific topics within this video, you'll see that the video timeline is divided into separate named sections, and there's a quick reference here on the screen. So Matthew, we saw in our recent research that 91% of employers believe that poor physical well-being is having a detrimental impact on workplaces. Is it now time to put more focus on physical health, and why?
Thank you, Maggie. And firstly, absolute pleasure to be with you today. Look, from our perspective, I think if we all really took an honest look at this, physical well-being is something that's impacted the workplace for a very long time. So a question of whether or not now is the right time, in reality, we should have always been looking at this. I think to your introduction, the most important point is that in the last 2 years or so, particularly with the impact of COVID and virtual and remote working, there's been a huge and relatively successful emphasis by employers on mental and financial well-being. And that's also evident by the number of great solutions that are coming to the market in those two spaces. The challenge is that physical well-being has been somewhat of a left or lost pillar of well-being in this last couple of years. I think the remoteness hasn't necessarily helped, as we've all been trying to work out what the right solution is. But importantly, healthcare claims and absences from the workplace are still predominantly impacted by physical factors and physical ailments. And as a result, if we both want to see an improvement in business performance, but also just generally, if we feel committed supporting employee physical well-being, then we have to do something about it, because it's certainly been left behind in the last 2 years.
And what can employers do to make sure that they're putting the right support and enough coverage in place?
So this is a really interesting one. As I say, perhaps it's that we haven't found the right solution yet in the last couple of years. But to give you some real examples, if we look to the likes of core and flexible benefits, it's very, very easy for us to think about the big ticket items that employers fund, like healthcare and retirement plans. When it comes to flexible benefits, and indeed the overlap they have to well-being, it's very easy to think about the 3 or 4 benefits, the likes of cycle to work schemes, gym memberships, and health assessments, all of which can have a positive impact on getting people mobile and moving, and also helping them understand their sense of physical health. But the reality is that beyond that, physical well-being is such a diverse kind of category or agenda, if you like. And so what might inspire me to address my physical well-being, either in a positive way, like the things I like to do outside of work, or if you like, fixing a negative issue, like a particular health risk factor, they're so entirely unique to me that they can no longer be really satisfied by a set of products and services. And this is where the big mindset shift is needed. We're going to talk, you and I, a lot about funding and investment into this area today. And the truth is that investment can't go into 1 or 2 specific products as it has done in the past. We need to put money into the hands of employees to give them reward and incentive for engaging in their very unique and personal way with their physical well-being. And historically, benefits hasn't kind of sorted that problem in the best way. But there are solutions that are now coming to markets that can indeed address that.
Thank you. And we also saw in the research that employers' top priority this year is to encourage employees to take more responsibility for their own well-being. But we also saw that 57% of employers say that physical well-being initiatives are not yet having an effect on employees at all. So why are current strategies not working?
Well, I think 2 things here. Firstly, let's not get too despondent. I think, well-being generally in the workplace is quite an immature thing. Don't get me wrong, I've seen some wonderful employers out there who do a huge amount in this space. But for the majority, we're still learning our way with what a great well-being strategy looks like. So we're not too far enough into it yet to expect us all to be doing this brilliantly. But then outside of that, to address the exact question, Maggie, we're putting all of our efforts at the moment into communications. And that's relatively good because that is the start of the process, right? Educate, improve awareness, help people understand the topics and the issues. But then there is a huge gap that comes with that we aren't rewarding and incentivizing people to then change their habits and behaviors that will lead to better health outcomes. So for me, the reason that we're not seeing a lot of success today isn't because necessarily our communication strategies aren't yet strong enough. We're missing an entirely different ingredient in this recipe, which is the right type of investment into the hands of employees who actively want to change their habits and behaviors. That's the big gap right now.
And do you have any examples of companies who've addressed this challenge of getting the least active employees in particular to engage with physical wellbeing benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, again, two different things that I'd like to talk about here. One is the creation of, if you like, wellbeing funds. This isn't too dissimilar to having a flexible benefits fund to pick and choose between, 5 to 10 different flexible benefits. But the difference with wellbeing, and as I've talked about before, that diversity of employee physical wellbeing needs, in reality, there are almost infinite number of products, services, and suppliers to choose from. And this is this difficulty of getting the money in the hands of employees to use it how they want to use it, when they want to use it. But we've already got several clients who've found the business case and the business support for that funding to put into the hands of employees to claim for everything from yesterday's London Marathon entry right the way through to their local tennis club membership or whatever it may be, right? Directing it specifically to the thing that's going to motivate me to change my behaviors. So that's number one. But then number two, to your point, Maggie, about how do we get those who are least engaged today? There are other initiatives, and communications, driving awareness and education, they can feel quite generic. Running initiatives like Know Your Numbers campaigns, having kiosks, doctors, nurses, physicians on site who can help me measure and understand my numbers around my individual health factors is normally the best way to translate it for something that might be a problem for me into something that is my unique problem, is often the best way to get those who are disengaged into thinking, right, my resting ESG, my cholesterol level, my blood sugar, that's honestly the one thing I now know is my health factor I need to start changing. So if you're not there yet ready to put money in the hands of people, then certainly at least go from communications to actually helping people understand their own personal situation and particularly measure it for them.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. And we saw from our survey also, and we've touched on this briefly already, that communication is another big area of focus for 2022. But do you think this is the right focus? And if not, what would you see as other areas of priority?
Yeah, so look, the research and the responses from your community, we're absolutely right that communications needs to be at the forefront of people's minds, no doubt. But the problem is, and to your question, Maggie, about why it might be failing today, I fear with physical well-being that communication is all we're doing and wondering why we're not getting results. So I'm not saying to stop communicating, that is the foundation, right? Education and awareness. But the other things that we need to do beyond that are firstly this investment piece, because without the rewards and incentives in the hands of our employees, they're not going to change their habits and behaviors, and they're not going to sustain that for the long term. But if we can say to them, Maggie, if I could say to you, you're missing out on £500 a year, if I don't inspire you to go start Zumba lessons or whatever it may be, we're never going to create that behavior. And people in reality aren't going to do it by themselves. And that's where the point of failure is at the moment. We might increase awareness, but we're then not giving people the tools and the incentive to go take action. That has to be the focus for 2022 and beyond.
That's great. And again, have you got any examples of good practice that you've seen to address this?
Yeah, indeed. So we've got one client here in the city who is particularly good at this, we feel. And the reason they're so good at this, another new concept for us today, is their mode of thinking when it comes to well-being. Again, if I give the comparison to employee benefits, the big employee benefits companies tend to pay for, they are usually the big ticket items that require a lot of investment, like retirement plans and healthcare plans. And we're typically making long-term decisions we need to commit to as employers. We don't want to be seen to chopping and changing our benefit strategy month in, month out. Wellbeing is entirely different though, because it's the small initiatives that make the difference. And so employers with an experimental mindset that are very, very good at engaging their employees and saying, look, We want to do things around mindfulness. We're just going to trial something. This client in particular, they trialed workplace, the work time origami during lunchtime, for example. It's one of those things. So they say, look, if it doesn't succeed, we'll cease the trial. We'll find the next thing. But they're very, very confident that they're just creating a culture of continuously trying to engage employees with new things. The things that stick, they remain and they work. And the things that don't, no one's beating themselves up if they fail, because they're really quite happy to at least say, we've tried it. We know it doesn't work for us. And we'll again move on to the next part of the experiment.
And what one action, if you could just choose one thing that you'd like to see employers do when it comes to their approach to physical well-being, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit meta, but I mean, ultimately, I want to see clients talk to their employees, right? Often we think to ourselves, and again, this is akin to benefit strategy, that we as a team, we need to come up with all the big decision-making and then launch it and hope that it's a success. Wellbeing has fundamentally shifted that relationship with our employees. Its complexity, its diversity, indeed the sensitivity of the topic of wellbeing means the only way we're going to best solve that problem is by talking to our people, finding out what they want and how they want it, and letting that be a continuous cycle of development. So just get out there and talk to your people more.
That's great. And thank you very much indeed for talking to me today, Matthew, and for your time and insights. And we've got some great examples there of how employers are starting to address the business risks of poor physical well-being. So if you'd like to know more about workplace physical well-being dilemma that we found in the research and how to address it, you can download the report from the REBA website at the URL shown on the screen. So thank you once again today, Matthew, for your time.
Thank you, Maggie.